So this panel is kind of a parallel to the previous panel, and we're going to talk about how AI is changing elections, but from the perspective of election technologists, people who are really deeply involved in the building of the election technologies that we're all using as we go to vote. So we have quite a great panel here. It's great. I'm going to start off by just a quick introduction of each of the panelists. Ask them each a kind of a quick, break the ice kind of question, and then we'll get into some questions for the entire panel. So first, closest to me, McDermot Coutts, and McDermot is the Director of Software Development at Unisyn Voting Solutions. He's been involved in elections for over 20 years, designing and developing end-to-end voting systems. He was also appointed as a technical expert on the Technical Guidelines Development Committee from 2018 to 2023, so knows a lot about elections and election technology. Then at the far end, we have Sam Derheimer. Sam's familiar to many of you. He's now the Director of Government Affairs at Hart InterCivic. Before that, he worked with the Pew Charitable Trust. So that's another job in which at least I got to know Sam. He serves as the chair of the American Council of Election Technology, and he is also has served 2 terms as chair of the Department of Homeland Security's Election Infrastructure Sector Coordinating Council. So again, a lot of experience with development and testing of software and election technology systems. Then we have Jared Marcotte, who is the president of the Turnout. And Jared has over a decade of experience and expertise in software standards development and design. The Turnout has worked with quite a few people on quite a few projects, including me, which has been a lot of fun, analyzing the voting process for military and overseas voters, developing the Rapid, do I call it Rapid V or Rapid 5? Rapid V? Okay, I can never tell what that V stands for. With the Center for Internet Security. He's done a lot of work with the Federal Voting Assistance Program and has been working to create a standard to make court data more accessible to search engines, working with the Pew Charitable Trust. It's an interesting project. Tonya Rice, right next to Jarrett. Tonya is the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Advocacy and Engagement here at WashU. Didn't have to travel very far to the conference. She's a strategic leader with a lot of experience at the intersection of elections, technology, and policy, from serving as Director of Elections in Cook County, Illinois, to Amazon Web Services, elections vertical, to digital advocacy leadership in higher education. Just a wide-ranging background, kind of spanning academics, election technology, and election administration. Glad to have you here with us today. Glad you didn't have to travel very far. And last, we have Ed Smith. Ed's down there towards the end. Ed's the Vice President of Election Solutions for MTX Group, a company that enables digital transformations in the public and private sector for their clients. Ed has a great deal of leadership, executive leadership, in the executive technology, in the elections technology industry, having had senior election leadership positions in, let's see, election technology providers that include, there's a long list here, Ed. Hart InterCivic, Sequoia Voting Systems, Dominion Voting Systems, who's been in the news recently, Clear Ballot, and Smartmatic. Quite a wide-ranging experience throughout the industry. So I'm going to back up and start with McDermot. So you've been working with Unisyn Voting Systems for several years. Can you just tell us a little bit about what exactly Unisyn does and what your role in Unisyn is?
Yeah, so Unisyn Voting Solutions develops tabulation systems for elections. We are in 15 states and 218 counties, I believe. So it is purely the tabulation from the ballot creation all the way through reporting, adjudication, risk limiting audit, and ranked choice voting. So we've been developing that for over 20 years. Our first county was actually Los Angeles County, which certainly gave us an interesting concept of scope, and have moved on, and we actually have quite a few counties here in the state of Missouri.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you all are using AI? So you're deeply involved in the software development process. So how are you using AI as a tool in what you're doing?
To quote Amy, tepid is the term. The VVSG, which is the standards that we all work under, explicitly forbids self-modifying code. So clearly, AI within a tabulation system is not something that you can have, ever. And we spend a lot of time isolating the systems so that they are consistent. Every place you go, they're going to read the ballots exactly the same. So we do that. And I kind of look at AI as a employee that sits in the back room with a continuous IV drip of Adderall and caffeine. And as long as you give them focused, clear requirements, it can take care of a lot of the grunt work. Mm-hmm. The problem that I have with AI is that it's supposed to make my life better and easier, and it doesn't really. It does the fun stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, it doesn't do my laundry. It doesn't commute to work for me, but it does the artwork. And so from that respect, from a very limited perspective, it can take care of some long typing. Mm-hmm. And some documentation, but it always requires that human element and more than one.
Great. So, Jared, you've had a long history, as I just mentioned in the introduction, in the election technology area, and the Turnout's deeply involved in that. So, can you tell us a little bit about the Turnout and the work that you're doing in this space?
Yeah. Thanks for having me, by the way. So I always like to describe the Turnout as sitting at the intersection of policy and technology. And what we mean by that is we try to help organizations better understand the statutory environment in which they live. And so that the shape that takes is process and policy analysis. It is data standardization. It sometimes involves developing solutions so that there's interoperability between systems, sometimes cross agencies. And we also create programs like RabbitV to help agencies understand the systems that they're trying to procure and make sure that they're safe to bring into their environment.
So I also want to ask you the same question that I followed up with McDermott. Since you all are involved in software development yourself directly and also involved in software and program development in the election administration industry, how do you think we should? You're smiling and almost laughing.
Yep.
How do you think AI should be used in software development, especially for election administration?
It's interesting. I mean, I still consider AI an emerging tech. I'm also a realist in that there are products on the market and people are going to use them. I think much like McDermott, it needs to involve a human oversight, because AI can generate a lot of content very, very quickly. And not all of that content is good. It's like the old movie saying, it's like 60% of the time it works all the time. Works every time. And I think that's a problem. And I mean, sort of to borrow the Adderall description, I've heard AI once be called, it's like working with a pair programmer who is mediocre, very enthusiastic, and on a lot of cocaine. To bypass any question that might come later, I've never worked with a coked out programmer, but I understand the sentiment. It is super confident. It is super excited to help, and mostly decent. And so if you're using an AI to design a system, if you're using an AI to develop a system, you need a lot of human oversight on that. And like McDermott said, more than one.
Right, thanks. One of the things that's fun about a conference like this is that I get to learn all these one-liners. I'm not a great person with one-liners, and also great descriptions of AI. Whenever anybody asks me what AI is, I'm always searching for a way to describe it. And thank you both for answering those questions. Tonya, now you're on the board of directors for Democracy Works, which is a nonprofit civic tech group that collaborates with election officials, tech platforms, corporations, colleges, and universities to provide nonpartisan election information. So can you tell us a little bit about your work there and also what your job here at WashU is?
Sure, thanks. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here, and it's great to see so many friends from the elections community. So first, at WashU here, I'm leading advocacy and engagement connected to policy and technology, really to advance the university's mission for teaching, research, and patient care. As part of that work, I work with faculty and staff, students, alumni, and friends, and connect them with government officials to help build trust. So on the Democracy Works side, I'm really doing the same thing, helping build trust, especially in this age of AI and rapidly changing digital information. So I'm really proud to be a board member of Democracy Works, which has been really championing civic engagement through technology for over a decade now. Democracy Works is a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization, and basically they provide information to sites, to apps, and groups that Americans trust. So last year in 2024, we worked with 1,600 elections in all 50 states, basically 8 million TurboVote users, which is Democracy Works' flagship tool for voter registration and election reminders, receive verified information. So that's what makes Democracy Works unique. We work as bridge builders, connecting verified information from state and local election officials with AI platforms so voters get that information in the areas where they're already searching.
Fantastic. And so I'm going to ask a follow-up question, but of course
Sure.
it's not going to be about how you're using AI in software development, right?
Okay.
But you did mention trust, and I think trust is something important that we haven't talked much about just yet, and I think we will have to talk more about it over the next 2 days. What role are you seeing for technologies like AI in building trust, in particular in this area of elections and election administration?
It's really important, and I mean, that's one of the most pressing challenges we're facing right now. When voters go to an AI tool or social media, they need to know that that information is accurate, and that's why we work directly with election officials in our voting information project, to source that information, right there, in the office and make sure, we have the elections API that connects the information directly with the platforms. On the AI side, from that perspective, we have also developed an AI manual for developers. And this isn't just technical documentation or guidance. It really underscores that any AI response should link back to the election official as the source. I mean, that's what really builds trust. You can provide a fact, but, knowing that that fact it's coming from a reputable source is, what builds trust. And election officials, I'll say, are also like the primary keepers of trust, like building trust in the community. And so AI can provide a fact or data point, but by strengthening relationships in the community and, kind of building bridges, and that way voters have more confidence in the system overall. So it's really AI and people working together. It's the humans in the loop.
Great, thank you. I really want to kind of put a pin on that one because I do think we want to talk a lot more about how AI can build trust in elections. I do think that's a super important topic. But Ed, so Ed you got this great long experience in the technology space and in particular in election technologies. I've known you for 2 decades probably. We had a great conversation this morning at breakfast about the election technology industry, which is actually undergoing a lot of transformation these days, and we won't talk about that here. But can you tell us a little bit about how MTX fits into this space and what MTX does in this area?
Sure, thank you. I appreciate it. Good morning. MTX is a little bit newer player in the space. We do have existing customers in both state of Georgia and state of New York, one each with election systems and the other with campaign finance. And I was brought in to help consolidate focus and build on that toehold in the industry. MTX services state and local government exclusively. We span a number of agencies in 37 states. Our largest line of business is licensing, permitting, and inspections. And when you look, most every state agency has some kind of regulatory something which fosters the growth of that vertical.
So how are you all using AI in your elections vertical specifically?
In the solutions?
Yes.
Oh, we use it in every product. We have entered it judiciously, and we use it personally as well. Some examples are, If a voter is applying to register to vote, they need to upload a specific legal form. One of the first things we do is the AI scans the form to make sure it's the right legal form. And if it's not, we tell the voter right away. And so now we have avoided taking county resources, who's usually your first stop in voter reg, to look at this form and say, oh, this isn't right, and communicate that back to the voter, who now knows it in real time instead of with some lag. So you've provided better citizen self-service. You have, in a county level jurisdiction, and we had a lot of county folks up here earlier, you have some polling places you need to inspect. They're prospective polling places, because now you can't use polling place X. So you're out looking at these 10 prospective polling places. You have 3 techs. AI can help us to route those 3 technicians or inspectors to the most efficient places, and do that much faster and more accurately than a person can. So in an app like that, we have embedded AI. And I'll give one last example. Campaign finance. One thing that AI does really well is look for patterns. And so you can match donors, donations, expenditures, check bank balances, and look for information that's missing or simply just doesn't look right, and alert the humans that there's something going on here that needs further investigation.
All right, thanks. So Sam, last but not least, so you've been at Hart InterCivic for a few years now.
Yep.
Can you describe a little bit your role there at Hart InterCivic?
Yeah, sure. So good morning, everyone. Happy to be here. I'm Sam Derheimer with Hart InterCivic, which is one of the large manufacturers of election equipment in this country. We provide the election systems in 20 different states, including here in Missouri, the ground you're standing on. We have St. Louis County and the city and the county as customers. So we focus on the part of the voting process that is the capture and counting of votes. I think everyone on this panel gets really annoyed when we see a news story that says voting machine malfunctions. You're like, which voting machine? The e-poll book, the scanner, the ballot marking device, the election night reporting system? So we have to define what we actually do, and I think that's really important, because what Ed does and what I do are very different, or what our companies do are very different. So again, we are the capture and counting of ballots. You heard earlier that there is one company in America that has a VVSG 2.0 compliant system. That is ours. That is Hart. So while the EAC certification team is furloughed, there will be no additional 2.0 system. So bad for our country, good for my sales team. Yeah. So good. I'll end it on that, right? George Costanza. End on a high note.
That's great. I understand you've been working on Hart's AI policy, and many organizations, I don't know what WashU's been doing, but certainly I know Betsy's been working on this, but Caltech, we've been struggling with AI policy as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and how you've been developing policy for AI at Hart InterCivic?
Yeah, absolutely. The evolution of our AI policy over the last few years, I think, is really informative, especially to the folks in this room. I'm going to take a stronger stance than what we heard on the last panel. If you are a state election official, if you are a local election official, if you are a company that provides technology for election infrastructure, you need an internal AI acceptable use policy, and you need it yesterday. Your staff are crashing into AI whether they know it or not, and you need to set the boundaries. And again, I'm not talking about state law or federal law. I'm talking about an internal office policy for acceptable use to set the boundaries that your staff can use AI efficiently and ethically. So we, over the past couple of years, our first AI policy was 2.5 years ago, and it was very straightforward, and it was very simple and very easy to understand. It was no. And if you look at the technology at the time, and if you look at the environment at the time, that fit. The tools were limited, the controls in the tools were limited, and the unknowns were great. And you had to go out and seek AI. That lasted like 6 months. And all of a sudden, tools that our staff were already pre-approved to use, like Microsoft Teams or Adobe, all of a sudden, they were crashing into AI whether we wanted them or not. So we changed. The technology advanced, we advanced our policy. We drafted a new policy that was kind of a case-by-case scenario. We looked at the departments within our company, evaluated the risk, right? A lot more risk in engineering than in marketing. And we developed case-by-case uses with some boundaries. Everything had to go to a department head and be approved by the IT manager, and you could potentially use AI in some circumstances. That lasted like 6 months. We then, earlier this year, developed a much more thorough use policy with some pre-approved uses, and we really built out a matrix. So you have to look at the models, you have to look at the controls the models use. Is it open or closed? Is it generative? Are the inputs made public? We built a full matrix of what departments could use AI for what purposes with specific boundaries and guidelines, with even naming specific AI tools, because all these models are not built the same. Now we do have the controls in the model that we didn't have even a year ago to make sure, is it an embedded tool or are you going to a website? Can you control whether the inputs are made public or whether they are kept privately in your closed system? So we went through that and we worked with an outside consultant to develop a full matrix in an appendix of our policy to show our staff when they could use it and when they can't. Again, as you've kind of heard, like, marketing and sales to analyze data have a lot more leeway than engineers do, and those are the kind of considerations that you need to come to within your internal office.
Oh, that's great. And is that policy available publicly somewhere?
It's our internal policy, and I'm very happy to share with the conference here the considerations that went into it, and how you're going to make your own. You use those considerations to make your own decisions. But yeah, I'd be very happy to share.
Right, I think that might be very helpful. Yeah, thank you. And then this is a good segue actually into my next question. For the entire group, and I think in some ways we may know one of Sam's biggest concerns with the use of AI in election administration, which is make sure you have a policy for that, right? But in general, I'd like to hear everyone's comments or thoughts about what their concerns are about the use of AI in election administration. So you all have microphones. Feel free to jump in here. Jared's ready to go.
Oh, I'm not.
It takes a second, yeah, once it's on.
Takes a second. Okay. Is it working now? Yeah. I think I'm really concerned that someone may mistakenly rely on AI without any sort of oversight or guardrails. Generative AI is, at its core, it's a guessing engine, essentially. It may be basing it on statistical analysis, and it's based on a lot of potentially very good information that it's being trained on, but it's very confident in the results, and sometimes those results are wildly wrong. So, I mean, going back to Amy's point of like the results of an election that hasn't happened yet. Like it could be getting trained by the data in VIP, but then, returning a suggestion that's like, well, that election's not over. So you could use it to brainstorm business names with a GPT, but, trusting it to know that those, like, which of the names that it just returned are trademarked already, I wouldn't trust it. So basically, like, believing it can perform any part of the election administration process without significant oversight, makes me break out into a cold sweat.
Ed?
To build on Jared's comments, most, if maybe all, of the problems I've heard this morning with the one about giving the wrong election date or calling the election prior to its existence are data quality problems. And what I fear, because of the resource constraints, and most folks in the room doing election administration probably didn't grow up through a data science background, you have data quality problems that are going to take even the best efforts, the best LLMs, models, and turn out bad results, which is going to then decrease trust in elections rather than increase trust in elections, which is the potential and what we're all seeking here. So when you look at programs like this, when you decide to jump in, start small, test, and be careful about how you test, and think through how your citizens are likely to exercise the system and use it and test accordingly. And keep humans in the loop. those are the ways to avoid these problems. But starting with making sure that your data quality is good is important. One thing we've done at MTX is that we use Gemini. We use a lot of Google tools, and it's our Gemini, and our IT people could explain a lot better than I can how it works, where it uses the universe of what's in Gemini to give us results, but it's weighted to our corporate information we're putting in. It keeps our queries secret from the rest of the world, which is a corporation, as an election office as well, you may want to do, because there's private information. And thereby we get better quality results back from our queries. I use AI every day. I'm using it to get second opinions, candidly. Although I talk to myself a lot and say it's because I need expert advice now and then. Sometimes actually the AI can give you a pretty good second opinion, in addition to just doing some basic research, especially when I'm doing business development work, research on the competition, who's out there, what they're doing. AI does really well with that sort of thing. Go fetch and retrieve. It does really well. And editing documents, editing pieces of product documentation, proposals. It can do really well with that. But the data quality is the foundation of a good and happy AI program.
Tonya?
Yeah, building on that, I'd say my biggest concern is the amplification of misinformation then. So it's been discussed, if an AI tool is relying on unverified data, then it may present information that is incomplete or outdated or just plain wrong. And that is not a hypothetical risk. I mean, that's a real threat to voter participation. And so that's where, at Democracy Works and across the civic tech sector, we're trying to, improve access to verified data from election officials so that we can, have a first line of defense, essentially, against those types of threats and mitigate the risk and increase voter participation instead of, increasing barriers, essentially.
Thanks, Sam. It looks like you can grab the microphone.
Yeah, I want to reiterate what Matt said on the last panel, but reiterate it from the industry side, and that is AI is a tool. It is not a replacement. And I worry about, on the industry side, I worry about like an abdication of our human responsibilities to do that work. Just like a calculator, as the human expert, if I put the right inputs in, I trust that it'll give me a good output. But I have to know that I'm putting the right inputs in, and someone has to be there to make sure that as an industry expert, I know what I'm doing and I'm giving it the right input. So I worry about any vendor that comes to you as election officials and says, we will replace X number of your staff with AI. AI is a tool, not a replacement.
Yes, you're right. It's human multiplication, not human replacement. I am working with a co-pilot. It makes me more efficient, more effective. I make better decisions, and we have better work outputs, but it's not there to replace me.
We're talking about this as if it's something that we're new that we're dealing with. But from the computer science side of things, we've been dealing with this for decades. For those who are in the industry, there's a concept called GIGO. Garbage in, garbage out. This hasn't changed. We're still dealing with the same problem. And technology just makes things faster, not necessarily better. So you're not going to solve a problem with your process with technology. It's just going to make your bad process work faster. And then you're going to have bigger problems. And so that's one issue. And again, it's the same issue we've been dealing with a long time. The other issue is that AI was created in our image and from our data. So ultimately, every piece of information in AI came from a human being. And that means that there is bias. And the AI engines generally can't tell the difference between bias and opinion and fact. And so that's where you have to really take a good hard look at it. And again, not just the human element, but multiple human elements, because we have a bias when we looked at our bias information. So nobody is bias free. And so we have to keep looking at that and saying, where are the facts? And that's what we use. And same thing for development. I've looked at software and then run the same requirements through an AI engine to say, okay, show me your code. It's not elegant. It's very brute force, and it did it very fast. But it's not maintainable, really, and it's not elegant, and that's where it needs to get.
Great, and we're getting a couple of questions here, so if you have any questions, please jot them down, and Michelle's running around grabbing them, and we'll get to those in a sec. I wanted to follow up with this, though, just maybe even a simple show of hands first, because a couple of the Mitchell's here, Raquel's here somewhere, yeah, they know, they're in my research group, and they know that sometimes I will have a sleepless night worrying about something that they're doing. In particular recently over how they're using AI in their research. So do any of you have sleepless nights, a waking moment where you suddenly say, I'm worried about the use of AI in my organization? Anyone? No? Yeah, Jared? Ed, maybe?
We put in policies. I did prior to some policy implementation work we did, like Hart InterCivic.
Okay, a little bit, okay. No sleepless nights though, huh? Okay, you sleep better than I do. Jared?
I did end up in one situation where I realized that a document that had been circulated around was clearly generated by some AI, and I had to prod a little bit on the employee that passed it around. What exactly AI developed this? And it wasn't any of the ones that we had approved for experimentation.
Mm-hmm.
So that always concerns me because while it wasn't for client work, I'm glad I caught it while it was just something internal and like low stakes.
Okay. Well, I guess I have students who are doing things with AI that are maybe more frightening than what's happening in your all's groups. We have one good question I wanted to start with, and I worry about this myself a little bit because a lot of times, even at Caltech, and when we talk about using AI, we talk a lot about humans in the loop, and that's important, obviously. But how well prepared, right, are employees and people who we work with to really be the high quality humans in the loop that we need to vet what AI is doing? So how can we prepare? How can we train? How can we ensure that employees in your organizations are really well suited to be the humans in the loop that we need to make sure that AI is not doing crazy things?
The number one thing is modeling behavior. If you are ethical and if you are watching and they know you're watching, that is the best way to keep things moving along and to know that, hey, I need to check myself. What's going on? What sort of ethical standard am I holding myself to? Because there is no morality or ethical thought in AI.
Okay, thank you. Ed?
Finding the right person that has the right subject matter expertise over it, and finding someone along with that actually uses the AI is very helpful because then you've seen it for yourself. For instance, I built a little agent that crawled our website and could respond to basic questions, and even set up demonstration times. And I found that for whatever reason, some days it would give really pretty accurate results, and some days it couldn't answer the same question in the same manner. I've later understood why that is, but just the fact that I saw that aberrant behavior for myself probably makes me a better human in the loop.
Tonya?
Thanks. Yeah, I just demonstrated that you value both human and computer interaction, essentially. So at Democracy Works, even though the company is focused on providing election information online, there's still a help desk with real people that can answer questions. And as part of the AI manual, we provide guidance for the platforms to not only provide a citation back to the state and local election officials' website, but also their help numbers. And so they can reach a real person if they have a question. So like on both fronts, you want to make sure that there is always that human in the loop, although computers essentially automate and provide a lot of information faster. It's great to have that real person there that can provide, more nuanced, contextual information, and a judgment that AI cannot.
Sure.
And I think a lot of the existing processes that you use internally for development and your own assurance play into the process of using AI as well. So you're still running code reviews, you're still running back-end processes that are analyzing the code, that are doing the builds, that are running the static analysis. All of that stuff figures in, and then working with mentors internally. So even the folks that are using AI extensively to generate their own code, they still have to write their own tests to make sure that that code is tested. They still have to do code reviews with somebody senior to them to make sure that there are no mistakes being made, et cetera, and make sure that they're going about it in the most efficient way possible.
Okay, great, thanks. So we have a sort of in the weeds question that I'm kind of curious about. Other than standard best practices, such as not connecting to the internet in like software development, what other considerations are being taken to combat nefarious attacks by AI? And I think this would be something that, maybe Sam, Ed, McDermott, so like in your organizations, how do you make sure that there aren't AI attacks on the systems that you're developing or the systems you're using to develop the technologies you're deploying? Or maybe you don't want to speak to that. I don't know. Any takers? Would you like to say like what systems should be in place in general to combat those kind of attacks?
I think to parrot what was said in the past panel, we're still learning that. I don't think we know that. This technology is emerging quickly. We are here at this conference to continue to learn and grow. I think to repeat what McDermott said earlier, there is a hard line, and this gives me some sense of security. There is a very hard line between using AI as a tool to help to develop election devices and using AI as an active component in election devices. There is no room for that latter at all, period. Election devices must, at least those election devices that capture and count votes, must be deterministic. They must follow a set, transparent, repeatable set of rules. And there is no room for AI inside the election device itself as an active component. So I think that gives me some sense of security, that everyone I have talked to across the industry is as steadfast in that as I am. So that gives me at least some sense of security for now.
Yeah, our CISO could answer this question a lot better than I can because he has control over our DevOps and DevSecOps processes. But one by closing off the Gemini AI LLM that we're using, that helps prevent poisoning the model, doing something that someone could inject and then do something that would mirror back against us. And then working with Secretaries of State's CIOs, completely unlike the tabulation systems, elections platforms, ethics platforms, voter registration, election management, lobbyists, campaign finance, those are online 7/24/365, and you have the inquiring public, as I call them, looking at those systems frequently, novice users, sophisticated users. And so the sort of attacks that high criticality websites undergo, be they banking, be they elections, anything where there's money or power, right? We have to maintain those same defenses in coordination with our customers in the Secretary's office.
Yeah. Tonya.
Sure. So in my prior life, I actually worked with Democracy Works on their cybersecurity posture with AWS, so I know their architecture very well. But it is having, that kind of cloud security and, basically following the guidelines of the NIST cybersecurity, framework that gives confidence to the companies and the public, that the information is secure. So really, it goes back to data quality. when you start looking at the amplification of that information.
So I wanted to follow up with something you had said earlier, though, if you don't mind staying with the mic for a second. Because another type of attack, and we talked a lot about this back in January at the conference we had at Caltech, are misinformation attacks. How do you think that election officials in particular can defend against those? I mean, we're seeing one in California right now, for those of you who are following Prop 50, the so-called peephole controversy, for example.
It is a rapidly changing environment. So in a sense, that's where, again, in my prior life, I'm thankful that I'm not facing a lot of the same challenges that election officials are right now. But it is remaining that trusted voice for the public and speaking the truth, speaking facts, breaking down what's accurate, what's not, and, answering questions directly to the public. They want to know what the information is in their county, what's the information in their state, just knowing not only what the verified results are, but also all of the processes. So that's where election officials are really the front line of defense, essentially, in fighting misinformation.
Thank you. McDermott, it looked like you were going to jump in on the previous one.
I was, but no.
Please,
I was, but we
like-
kind of moved on.
Oh, no, I'd like to hear your comments on it. We can go right back to it.
To quote Mad Eye Mooney, for those who know who that is,
Vigilance.
constant vigilance, exactly. And unfortunately, there's a whole lot of really creative people out there in the world, and you can use your powers for good or for evil. And we've got enough people doing each. So for everything we try to come up with to prevent, we have somebody trying to circumvent. So it's a never-ending cycle. And unfortunately, we wind up being a little bit more reactionary than we would like in many cases, even though they're not going to try the same thing a second time. It's much like the explosives in the shoes. We've been taking off our shoes in the airports for years. Nobody else has tried that again. So are there best practices? Yes, but it's in this particular space, you just have to keep going. And quantum is not making it any easier.
Great. So one question that I'm curious about is, this one is directed at Ed specifically, but it might also be interesting to get other folks' opinions on kind of on the general issue of using AI in the voter registration process. They wanted to just see if you could describe a little bit more how AI is using in the voter registration scenario that you described. Is it somebody submitting a paper registration form at a front counter, online form? Just having a hard time visualizing how your platform is using AI to help improve the voter registration process.
Sure. So for this particular, there's a few instances where we're using AI, and I'll describe those. For this one, there is a requirement to upload information to the state. And so the Citizens Portal allows for that. You can have a PDF document. You can download the form. You can fill it out wet signature. You can fill it on your screen. If you fill it out wet signature, wet ink, you're going to have to upload that form. And the first thing the AI does is look at the form and say, yep, that's the right legal form. It's not a photograph of a person or a cat or something that's not, or it's just not the right form at all. We are then OCRing that information, which is saving county staff some time. And the OCR has an advantage here in that we already have, this is a registered voter, they're looking for an absentee ballot. We already have their golden information from their voter registration record. And so I's don't become ones and vice versa, zeros don't become O's and vice versa, because we already know that voter's information. So the OCR becomes very accurate. And then we can review the content of the form and say, yeah, that looks complete, and send that electronically over to a county person, a human, to agree, disagree, ask for more information, and basically interact with the voter through the system. And if we have that voter's email or mobile phone number, send them a message back. So we're dealing with the citizen basically in real time, and we've done everything to squeeze out inefficiencies from the process in terms of the county's workload. So that's that one instance of how AI is working. And it's not making grand decisions. It's doing things that actually these models have done well for years. Image checks, for instance. OCR, that technology's been around for a long time.
Great. So, and this is a more general question for everyone. Are there other ways in which AI can be used to improve the voter registration process, the quality of the voter registration data, voter registration auditing, other ways that AI could help improve voter registration? No takers. Okay. So the answer is, I don't know. Okay. I can talk about that later. Here's a question for everyone. What percentage of your day do you spend working or thinking about AI? Can you break that down into different percentages? This gets into the weeds a bit, but risk mitigation, system evaluation, use, compliance, innovation. But just in general, I mean, how much of your day is spent thinking about or using AI actively in your job?
I spend a lot of time thinking about it.
Okay. Is that half the day, the full day, lunchtime, when you're working
A
out?
lot over the last couple of weeks. This is like a, go check out my blog comment, but I recently wrote an article about how we might work it into the RapidV program. Because RapidV looks at the organization that developed a product, the architecture of that product, and then product verification. So for the first two, we at least have questions that we can ask to gain information. We're not changing the program yet, so people who are going through it, they're still going to go through the normal process the standardized process we've already come up with. But we do want to gain information about how the AI might change the verification process in the end. Obviously, the part that I'm the most stuck on is product verification. How do you verify if there's an AI built into the product? How do you verify anything about it? Because you can ask it the same question 3 times and you can get 3 different answers. And the questions are going to be, how did you arrive at this particular solution? And again, arriving at 3 different answers does not help us verify that did it correctly, or that 100 times down the road it's going to arrive at the same answer. So, thinking about it a lot.
A lot.
A lot.
Okay, a lot. Sam, what about you?
Certainly more and more. As an example, right, I am Hart's government affairs director when the Texas legislature formed a new committee, the Select Committee on AI and Emerging Technologies, and invited me to come testify in front of them. I had to start thinking about it a lot more. And we're seeing that from a policy perspective, we're seeing that across the country. I think NCSL is here. I think Adam's on a panel to maybe later today or tomorrow, so they can talk about those too. But over the past couple of years, over half the states have passed some form of law addressing AI in elections. Now, almost exclusively, those were about synthetic content. But there have been other draft bills that start to get into risk mitigation around AI and government systems, which obviously elections falls under that window, or under that umbrella. So more and more, I'm starting to get asked questions from state and federal policymakers about AI and how it is being engaged within the field of elections. So I don't really have a percentage, but a few years ago, it was certainly less than 10%. It is certainly growing more and more every day.
So a lot. Okay. Others?
So my day job here, I utilize AI for legislative analysis. It's really great for synthesizing, large volumes of text. And then think about AI for innovation, working with students to build some new apps for advocacy and just different ways to engage. So I think there's a lot of promise there. On the democracy work side, I'm more in the back seat, kind of looking at what our developers are doing and always amazed at kind of what's possible and coming next. So I'm more optimistic, I would say, about AI and the usage of it, just with guardrails in place, both in my regular job, my day world, and then, my second shift with Democracy Works.
Ed, McDermott? All the time?
Well, it depends on which side of the firewall you're on. As you might have noticed, I have something of a philosophical bent. And so on that side, I'm constantly thinking about AI and where can that be improved. And again, it's a tremendous tool. It's, but with great power comes great responsibility. And I'm surprised I'm the first one to use that quote, by the way. And so on that side, philosophically, I'm thinking about it all the time. When I'm at work in the development mode, almost never, because we shouldn't use it. It should be something that my team is developing the software. We are reviewing it. We are looking at everything. We are testing it. And kudos out to our QA team who has been doing that as well, making sure that everything works. And then to the labs where they do a lot of the same work. And it's very manual, but we know what the results are going to be, and we know how it's going to come out because we know the people.
I'll go ahead and answer. I don't really have a lot to add. I use it every day. AI does really well with rote things to do, like summarizing documents. Taking a paragraph that I've written, putting it into Gemini and saying, check this for English grammar errors, reading level is 12th grade, purpose is business, and coming back and it finding where I put ethic commission instead of ethics commission, or have an extra period at the end of a sentence. It does really well with that sort of thing, and suggesting more concise language, which just makes it look better. The development stuff, looking further out more broadly, is very event-driven. With something that was new information for me, some new application I saw for our tool set. It kind of happens when it happens.
Great, thanks. Since there were no takers on my question about registration, I'm going to ask Tonya very specifically about this. How can AI be used to improve voter accessibility, especially for younger voters?
Sure. I was going to say, I have a lot to say about your first question as well, but that was in a prior role it had.
We can talk about that offline.
Yes.
We've got 4 minutes.
Sure. But very briefly, for accessibility with younger voters, especially, college students, here at WashU and across universities, they utilize, Democracy Works Turbo Vote for voter registration. But AI has the ability to meet them where they are in emerging platforms. So there's all kinds of messaging tools that the kids today are always using. I'm like, what's that? Never heard of before. But you can easily integrate into that, and social media sites, that where they are, meet them where they are. With new citizens, for example, too, AI is great for translation services, multilingual accessibility. Voters who might not feel comfortable walking up to an election official can ask a quote unquote basic question, without judgment. And so an AI tool is great for that. When you look at voters with disabilities, there's, different screen interfaces and, voice activation tools that, allow voters to, receive information and, participate in our democracy in a way that, they were not before. So there's just so many different ways that technology is increasing access to participation.
Great, thanks, Ed.
Just like as I mentioned, it can enhance the quality of your writing. It can enhance the quality of your display screens. So in the elections and ethics back office world that I now live in, as opposed to the tabulation world, we will generally use the ethics commissions or the secretaries of state branding. And so it's a little different across all 51 states in D.C. But you still need to have proper compliance with WCAG for those with the guidelines for accessibility. And in fact, it's required. Starting in April, there's a DOJ rule that's going to come up and get people. You can properly train a model as to what meets usability standards, what is highest and best for usability, and put your screens in and let it tell you, oh yeah, that's not in the right place, that's not the right order. We have corporate standards, so dashboards, left to right, top to bottom flow for English language screens. It'll tell you if you violated those. And so now your screens are better. You have better usability. Use of plain language. Did you use plain language, which is a term of art, in your messaging or not? And suggestions for how to change a sentence to where it meets plain language guidelines.
Great. Well, we're done with that. Before we have a round of applause and thank our panelists. Just wanted to say lunch is down the hall where we had breakfast. We're back here at 1 o'clock, okay, in this room. But please join me in thanking our panelists. It was a great conversation.